morning.
Good morning.
Voorhees University. I know we could do a bit better than that. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome to our Lyceum series. I am so excited today to have before you the Dr. Daniel Black. I am going to allow him to do what he does, and you will see why even in this moment I get to fangirl a little bit, but I am going to stay exactly in this moment of where we are, and it is 11 o'clock, so I do want to make sure that we start on time. So, and just, before we get started, I have to tell you how I met this wonderful man. When I tell you just wonderful in every aspect, pre-pandemic, right? A notice of a flyer came across my desk, and it was like, we're hosting Daniel Black down at the College of Charleston. Wait a minute, the Daniel Black? I said, okay. At the time, I was coaching HCAS, Honda Campus All-Star Challenge. And I said, well, I'm gonna at least see if they'll let me take a couple of students down to see him and to read some of the books, and let's get engaged in what we do. So I put the flyer out, and the students signed up, and we went down, and the experience was amazing. So we ended up at the College of Charleston in this auditorium, the only African-American students that came to that event.
Right.
It was awe-inspiring. And I remember after he does what he do, so I'm laughing, but after you did that, remember we were getting ready to leave, and you said, hold on just a second. And you signed books, and he took pictures, and we waited, and he came to speak to the students of Voorhees College.
That's right.
And just the words, and I remember you distinctively telling them to honor the space that they were in.
Yes.
That every time they came on their campus, that it was sacred and it was holy ground. And they have remembered those words. And there are a couple of those students, even from that photo that we shared, that are still here. So I'll make sure that you see Ray Morris and Jarena Weber and Nathan and some of the other ones. So just thank you for doing what you do and breathing life. And after I met Dr. Black, I came back to campus all excited, and because Dr. Mason knows everybody, and we're going through the Lyceum series. And I said, Dr. Mason, I met this wonderful man, and I need to get him here. And he was like, okay, well, who is it? And I went through it, and he let me explain, my love for this man. And by the end of my story, y'all thought I was doing something. So by the end of my story, Dr. Mason says, I know him. No problem, it's done. And when he said it was done, it was done. So I got all excited again, right? And then COVID came and said it was not done. And then we had to have this virtual space. But he assured me, he said, that's okay. He said, because this too shall pass. And when it passes, I will come to Voorhees. And so this is him in the flesh. So as I fangirl throughout, y'all just, pray for me. But it is truly an experience, and I want you to understand all of who he is, all of what he brings to this space, this place, and this time. And it's just like meeting you, and you have that spiritual connection, and you've been a friend since then. And so I thank you.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
thank you,
Yes,
and I
ma'am.
honor you
Yes, ma'am.
for being with us today.
Yes, ma'am. I'm glad to be here.
And so at this time, even before we get started, I am going to ask my very own faculty member, Dr. Benny James, to come and give us our introduction right quick. So will you do us the honor?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Grace and peace to everyone. Will you bow your head with me in prayer? Good morning, Father. So again, we come to say thank you for all you have done. Thank you for early rise this morning, how you allow the breath of life to breathe over our face, wake us up, and start us on a new day journey. Indeed, this is a journey, and we want to thank you for it. We have gathered here for this wonderful occasion. Thank you for sending Dr. Black to inspire us, to talk to us. Thank you for the power of speech and the power to write. I pray, God, that you would say something that would change a generation forever. I pray that your presence would be in this room, because we believe that all things are done by your name and by your presence. So in you we live, we move, we have our being. So as you have blessed Dr. Black to come on our campus, I know you have something for us. Let him become a reservoir that he will pour into us and that we will receive. I believe that you will do this. This is a blessed moment. We sanctify this moment and we reverence this morning. Do what you will. Do it the way you know. We give you thanks and we give you praise. In Jesus' name, amen.
So we titled this A Transformative Conversation. And so we're just going to allow you to come and do what you do and transform us all. You will not be disappointed. So.
Well, good morning. And do you all mind if I don't take the chair? You know, I've been so excited to get here that I really kind of can't sit down. I woke up this morning about 4:30, 5 o'clock and said, I got to get to Voorhees. I'm from Atlanta. I'm living in Atlanta. And is this on? Is it on? I don't even know that I need this. I talk loud. Okay. And I'm really here for two reasons. I'm certainly here because of Dr. Mason, right? I'm certainly here because of my dear friend and sister. But I'm also here because I teach at a Black college too. I teach at a place called Clark Atlanta University. This is my 30th year on faculty at Clark Atlanta University. So I know the magical power of places like this, right? I also know that in places like this, people sometimes can do transformative work and it can be missed, right? That sometimes we can get overlooked easily, right? That we do all kinds of sacrificing and we do all kinds of mentoring and sometimes we can be overlooked. So I'm just coming by to tell you today that somebody sees you, right? Somebody sees you. And God takes really good notes, right? God is a hell of a note taker. So when you're doing this magical kind of work, it seems like no human being see you. Somebody is writing your name in the right place, right? And that's the one you need to write it. You know, and I'm a writer by design, right? I'm a writer by trade. It's what I do. It's what I love. And people sometimes ask me why I do it. And one of the things I always say is I write because my ancestors couldn't. I read because my ancestors believed that if you could put an idea on a piece of paper, you could change the world. That if you could transform an idea to a sheet of paper and someone else read it in a whole nother part of the universe, you could literally shift the world. And I tell my students at Clark all the time, it's a shame for Black kids not to read. Now, other kids, you know, I'm going to let them do whatever they do. But it's a shame for Black kids not to read. And why? Because our ancestors died for your ability to do it. And that's why we should do it. Because our ancestors understood one thing. And that is, if you could get in the game of thinking, if you could get in the game of the exchange of philosophy and the exchange of ideas, your enslavement could never happen again. It's impossible to enslave someone who can outthink the slave master. And that's our job. Our job is to make sure we never go there again. That's our job. And the only way for that to happen is for us to make sure that when folks call people to the table, right, to write the ideas, when folks call people to the table to construct the future, we have to be at the table, right? And we have to include these ideas of who we are. I wrote a book. I've written many books, actually. I wrote a book called Don't Cry for Me. And this book is a book about an old black man, an old desperate black man who's on his deathbed. And this black man is dying. And he has not seen or heard from his son, his only child, in over 20 years. They've had a very tough relationship. They're very estranged. But by the time he gets to the end of his life, he realizes that things they argued about, things they fussed about, things that he disagreed with 20 years ago don't even matter now. And all he wants is to be reconnected to his son. But they're so estranged that he has a hard time even reaching out to physically connect with him. And so his father decides that he's going to do a very interesting thing, and that is he's going to leave his son a literary legacy. He's going to write the story of who he is, his hurts, his pains, his difficulties, his unbelievable struggles. He's going to put it on a sheet of paper and leave it for this son. Because ironically, he birthed a son who loves everything except athletics. This son he birthed is an academic. He's a reader, he's a thinker, he's a writer. And his father was not that. And quite frankly, that's not the kind of son he wanted. This daddy wanted a son who was a carbon copy of himself. But that's not what he got. He got a son who was so academic and so intellectual that in many ways he outthought his father. And it hurt him, it wounded him, it hurt his feelings. But by the time he gets to the end of his life, he decides that he's going to write a series of letters. And this book is a series of letters. It's called the epistolary form. And in this series of letters, he opens his heart and he shares his heart with his son. And his prayer, his earnest plea is that his son will read these letters and now forgive him and not hate him for the rest of his life. And the question is, why did I write this book? Why did I write this book? Being at Clark, I found too many instances over the last 30 years where I met students who love their mama. Kill you over their mama. You say something about their mama, they will fight you. But things got ambiguous when you mention their fathers. And that, as a black man, that troubled my spirit. I said, something's wrong here. So it just cannot be true that black men don't love their children as much as mothers love their children. That can't be true. That can't be true. But again, when I would mention somebody's mother, they'd be like, oh, listen, my mama, that's my girl. And they say, I talk to my mama every day. Great, how do you talk to your dad? I mean, well, you know. Whoa, what? Something's wrong here. This is not right. This is not right. And I decided that somehow we have missed something as a people. And I think I discovered what it is we missed. But I have to admit, it took me a lifetime to get it too. I grew up with a very old, traditional father from the rural South. And there are many ways I did not understand my father. There are many things I did not get about my father. He was a hard man. Did you hear me? Hard. This man was hard. He was harsh. He was difficult. He was not tender. He did not hug and kiss me. He didn't read bedtime stories. None of that. What my father loved to do was to tell children what to do. He loved that. And what he also loved is to absolutely beat your ass if you didn't do it. That's the daddy I had. That's the daddy I had. And so I always believed that daddy and I, we'd never be friends. We'd never be really emotionally connected, right? But what's really, really funny is daddy would tell me things about himself that I just didn't understand. I didn't get it. Because daddy was waiting on me to interpret his heart. Right? Daddy would say things to me like, boy, you know, I've been on my job 42 years. Never missed a day. And in my head, I was like, do you want an award? Hell, why are you telling me this? That's good, marvelous. But y'all, what I did not get that daddy was really telling me was the translation of that statement is, I love my kids so much that not a demon in hell would keep me from doing whatever necessary to make sure they eat. I did not understand that. I did not understand him to be saying that. I didn't get the interpretation. But why do I understand now he was expecting me to interpret? Because I'm the reader. I'm the reader. Daddy never got a chance to go to school. I did. So what am I supposed to bring to the table that he couldn't? It's a thing called analysis, right? It's a thing called analysis. The ability to look at a thing and to see it for more than what it looks like, right? The ability to look at a thing and say, there's more here than meets the eye. How many of you ever saw the movie Hidden Figures? Raise your hands. Anybody saw the movie? Right. That movie's about this black woman, Katherine Johnson, who does the math necessary, right, to figure out how to get a man to the moon and back, right? Right? Let me put this book in. Let me tell you what's profound about this in terms of analysis. We know that she figures out how to get a person to the moon and back. You know what they don't say in the movie? No, what nobody ever says from that movie is she had to go to a black college to do it. She's a black college graduate. Well, of course she is. It's the 1950s, it's the 1960s. If you were black and doing anything at the time, you went to a black college because no other college would take us yet. But how in the hell did a black woman figure out the analytical math to send a person to the moon and back? They weren't even teaching analytical math at the West Virginia State where she went to. How did she learn that? How did she learn? Because if you're in places like Voorhees, you know one thing you know if you stay here and graduate? There are classes that happen that's not in the classroom. There are levels of learning that go on that does not happen in the class. It happens in the professor's office after class is over. It happens when you're standing outside on the steps and just have a conversation. See, that's part of the educational process too. So Katherine Johnson is learning analytical math by just sitting in the teacher's office, saying, hey, and the teacher says, hey, listen, we don't really teach analytical math here, but I play with a little analytical math myself. And if you want to just, play with some figures on the paper with me, hey, we can do it. How do I know this? Because it happened to me. I graduated from a place called Clark Atlanta University in the 1980s. It was in the 80s. And this is really a true story. I had a teacher named Dr. Janice Liddell. Dr. Janice Liddell had a specialty in Caribbean literature. They did not teach Caribbean literature officially at Clark Atlanta University. She was my English comp teacher. But I was a really good student, and she came to me one day and she said, you're a really amazing student. You should think about being an English major, right? As well as you write. I said, well, okay, I love to read and write, blah, 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 blah. And she said, I have some books that I want to just recommend that you read. She gave me books by a couple of Caribbean writers. I was like, oh, I love this. This is amazing. She said, well, listen, I have tons of Caribbean books at my house. I said, well, do you mind if I come to your house? She's like, listen, come on, I'll meet you Saturday morning. This is really true. She met me on Saturday mornings. I'm at her house, and I'm reading Caribbean literature. I'm reading Edgar Mittelholzer. I'm reading Jamaica Kincaid. I'm reading Braithwaite, right? Just on a Saturday morning at my professor's house. Stay with me now. I finished Clark, and I'm applying to the PhD program in African American Studies, which is the first PhD program in African American Studies that opened up in 1988 at a place called Temple University. Well, they got 5,000 applications. They got literally 5,000 applications. They took 30 people. They got down to 100 and they interviewed us. When I went for the interview, they said, well, Mr. Black, you put on your paper that you have a specialty in Caribbean literature, but we don't see any courses on your transcript in Caribbean literature. I said, I understand that, because my teacher taught it to me unofficially. They said, well, that can't really register as you have a specialty in Caribbean literature. I said, I beg to differ. And I said, right, being bold, I said, ask me anything. Ask me. Ask me. And they said, well, do you know the name Earl Lovelace? I said, know him, and I can tell you every book. Which book you want to talk about? And they said, well, do you know the schoolmaster? I said, let's go. And we began to talk about the schoolmaster, and I gave some analysis about the schoolmaster. And people on the committee were people like Malefia Sante, Sonia Sanchez, right? So I'm talking about Caribbean leaders, I'm talking about the Earl Lovelace, and they're like, wait a minute, you doing analysis, how in the world? I said, this is the magic of a thing called an HBCU. This is what we do. This is what we do. So the bottom line is they accepted me with a full ride, full scholarship. And I'm the second person in the world to get a PhD in African American studies. Right? I'm from a black school. So what I'm really telling you students, and what I'm really affirming in the faculty is, if you do Voorhees right, if you do it right, I didn't say if you just are here. Right. If you do Voorhees right, Voorhees will do you right. It will cover you. You do it right, it will cover you. You don't have to compare yourself to anybody else in the world. You don't have to compare yourself to any other school in the world. This one right here will do it. This one right here will do it. This school right here in the middle of South Carolina. How do you know? This school is built on the same land that slaves ran across. Y'all really have to forgive me. Do you know how deep that is? Those same trees, these right out here, those same trees, somebody glanced at the top of running to freedom. Same trees that shade you now. Same trees, same land, same energy, same energy. If you got them to freedom, it'll get you to freedom too. All you got to do is do this thing right. Do it well and do it right. I'm gonna read you an excerpt from Don't Cry for Me. This is the author's note, the beginning of the text, in terms of why I wrote this book. When in 2013, my father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, I knew what it meant. He'd soon forget what he'd done or said to me over the years. In fact, Daddy would need my sympathy, perhaps my financial assistance, as his memory faded away. For a long time, I had wanted us to hash things out, to speak honestly about how we had hurt or disappointed one another over the years. But Daddy's mind left like a dream at dawn. And now this encounter could happen only in my imagination. So that's where I went. I saw in my mind my father leaning over a legal pad, writing as best he could, something very private, very painful that couldn't wait another day. I imagined him ancestral, though still in the flesh, such that he knew and understood everything about me. And I imagined Daddy unashamed. I wondered what he'd say to me if he could stare into my heart. This book is his response. My father grew up at a time when children meant nothing to America. Most of them, including him, didn't have a birth certificate. Their care, their education, their self-worth was optional. Whether they lived or died was insignificant to the state. For the most part, their existence centered around work and church, and even the church taught them that they were wretches and sinners undone, black children of Ham, who without a forgiving God had no hope in this world or the next. Children of my father's generation were taught that dreams were a waste of time. Schooling happened only when there was no labor to be done, and that wasn't very often. This is the world that shaped my father's consciousness. In his old age, he retired from his job as a mechanic, and the state informed him that he needed a birth certificate. He told them he never had one. The state told my father, get a birth certificate form and just make it up. If you don't know your birthday, hell, any day will do. I was horrified at the arbitrary nature of his life. Only then did I understand his harsh, insensitive demeanor. In some ways, Daddy envied the freedom he had provided for me. He too had wanted knowledge, travel, enlightenment, but such was laughable for a black boy in the 1940s. Yet my freedom angered him. It made me question his world, his convictions, his God. After college, I wanted nothing to do with Daddy's notion of manhood. He wanted no parts of my fluidity. We were never united in our hearts again. Yet once Alzheimer's took Daddy's mind and softened his boldness, I discovered a man who was more than a field plow. He wanted what I wanted, to mean something to the world, to make a difference in somebody's life, to be admired for the very flesh he was. But we never achieved that mutual clarity. So this book, this record of a poor black father's appeal, is what any dying daddy might say to his son. More than anything, I want readers to reconsider the capacity of our fathers' hearts. Many of them were handed so little, yet we expected so much. They gave more than they had, but less than we needed. They were burdened with the notion of manhood that destroyed so many sons' lives, but they didn't know another notion to teach. In the end, they destroyed themselves and the sons too. But if they'd been allowed to dream, they might have dreamt sons who were not carbon copies of themselves. They might have imagined sons in all their glory, dancing before the world without shame. They might have even granted a queer son permission and affirmation to be himself, regardless of the world's perception. They might have known that some spirits come into the world to disrupt normalcy and thereby create space for the despised and the rejected. And they might have understood finally that every son is an eternal blessing, if they've been allowed to dream. Thank you. I want to say one last thing, and then I'm going to take questions here from the great moderator. I understand that homecoming is next week. Is that right?
Yes.
Here at Voorhees. And Black people do homecomings because, and Clark, we just had ours last week. It was insane. But what I want y'all to get clear about is Black people do homecomings because America has disrupted our home, right? We're trying to piece together a semblance of community and maintain it in the midst of people who really get joy out of our destruction. And I'm saying this in order to be very, very clear with Voorhees students that when you leave here, you've got to leave here with a memory. You have to leave here with a spirituality. You got to leave here with a God that you are convinced will fight the whole world to save you. Don't serve a God who wouldn't serve you. And don't serve a God who don't look like you. When you look in the mirror, if you don't see something divine, something's already wrong. Your God ought to look just like you. Do you know how crazy it would be to go among ants and the ant God looks like an elephant? The ant God ought to look like an ant, maybe with a crown. But it still ought to be an ant. Why? Because the most divine thing you know ought to be you. It ought to be you. And a place like Voorhees teaches this in so many ways. Young people, there are professors here who make less than half of what they can make somewhere else. Then the hell, why are they here? One day what you're going to realize is they were here because in order that you wouldn't get raggediness. They were here in order to bring excellence before people who the state said didn't have to have it. And they said, yes, they do. Black kids deserve excellence, and I am excellent. And so I'll go there. And yes, I'll take half. But what I'm here to tell the faculty too is in just a minute, what's also true, whether here or in eternity, you shall get double the effort. You shall get double the effort you put in. Listen, all of this is going to be equalized and it's all going to be leveled out before the whole thing is done and over with. Young people, just get clear. Tap a professor, tap an administrator on the shoulder and say, for me, thank you. For me, for me, thank you. Because the day will come where you'll realize, you'll bump into all other people who are claiming to be awesome and excellent and wonderful. And when you see how raggedy they are, you'll say, damn, they needed 4 years. That's what you'll say. The day is coming. The day is coming. Let me take these questions.
Let's give Dr. Black another round of applause. And I do hope that you understand too that there was an entire introduction printed on the back of this sheet. But how do you introduce someone who needs no introduction? You let him do what he does.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes,
And he does it so very well. Okay? And I do have a couple of questions, just a few.
Yes.
But I know that our students, this excellence, you're gonna get some of this excellence
Yes,
with
yes.
that Black boy Jordan you have.
Yes.
And so I want them to have an opportunity to speak to you as well.
Okay.
But one of the books that I love, not that I don't love all
Sure.
of your writings,
Sure.
but The Coming
Yes.
was phenomenal.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you.
And that was in between my own sojourn to Africa and
Oh,
then
yes.
and then look, I had the nerve to come back and then go up to the African American Museum, so I was tore up from flow up, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I was done. But in that moment, even as you spoke at the College of Charleston, you talked about your writings being a spiritual process.
Right.
What does that look like, even as you've shared moments of don't cry for me?
Right.
These things are, you talked about the ebbing of the flowing of you sitting with your laptop
Right.
and you feeling the waves of the water.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. The Coming is a book about the Middle Passage. The entire book is about the Middle Passage, and it's a day by day, in many instances, hour by hour account of that trip our ancestors took from Africa across the waters to this place called America. And my writing process is I never get to decide what I want to write. I can't ever choose a topic where I wish I could and write it, right? Topics always are sent to me, right? And I think it's ancestral. I believe it's ancestral. They're sent to me and I have to write what it is the Spirit says I must write. Because the writing ultimately is for a people, right? Not a person. And so when The Coming came to me, I realized I was writing this story about the Middle Passage. And then later I realized why I had to write it. And that is because we have now birthed an entire generation of young people who think their lives are cheap. The point of The Coming is to really help young people understand how expensive Black life is. Right? And just how much somebody paid just for the possibility. Now, it wasn't even a guarantee that it would happen. They were just paying for the possibility that their children's children's children would inherit the greatness and the grandeur and the majesty of what it means to be of African descent. And that would be enough, right, to keep African life into eternity. And I realized that if we continued on as a people and let Black children continue without knowing the price of their being, that they would sell themselves for almost nothing in a minute. And I got that clue because, I have a lot of students who introduced me to a lot of hip hop. And so, when I listen to a lot of hip hop, I'm a little troubled at times. We just had, the young people are going to help me, we just had Jaharbo, help me out.
Also known as Takeoff.
Takeoff, oh, okay, all right, y'all help me, all right. And Drake and all these other folks on campus. And I'm gonna be a little crude so that we get this point. See, somebody is disconnected from their minds, right? If the children of Frederick Douglass, if the grandchildren of Harriet Tubman, if the grandchildren of Shirley Chisholm, if the grandchildren of Fannie Lou Hamer, if the great-grandchildren of Nat Turner can be niggas and bitches, right? We have absolutely lost something. We've lost something. There is a problem. There's absolutely, positively a problem. And it absolutely must be fixed, or either we're going to throw Nat Turner away. Right? We're going to throw Denmark Vesey away if we're not careful. We're going to absolutely dismiss Harriet Tubman as being a myth in a minute if we're not careful. right? And what I want to do is make sure that never happens. And so with the coming, what I was really aiming to do, and what I pray I did, was to force all of us back on the boat. To put all of us back on the boat. In order to say, you have got to know and understand the excruciating cost of Black existence in order to thrive in the midst of this place called America that is still killing us by the hour, right? But we are resurrecting people. See, you can kill Black people. What you cannot kill is Blackness, right? And so our job is to make sure that Blackness always thrives, that it's constantly thriving. But the only way to do that is to be connected to the source that is constantly feeding and constantly reminding us of our effort and of our power. And I pray that the coming does that.
It does that and so much more. You speak a lot too about just the fluidity of nature.
Yes.
The fluidity of who we are as a people, with a purpose, with a plan. And you have this platform. So how integral is that to your process of getting people to understand that fluidity is in everything that we see, touch, breathe, from our race to our sexuality to our being?
Right. Really, the truth of the matter is fluidity is really the mark of what it means to understand ourselves as African people. Even when you talk about nature, right? I find it so interesting that as soon as our ancestors stepped off these slave ships, they began to sing about water, right? Go down, Moses, way down, right? Talking down to the Red Sea, or they're talking about wade in the water, or 'tis the old ship of Zion. See, what most people don't know is the old ship of Zion was the slave ship that brought us here. We couched that song and the metaphor in the iconography of the Christian church in order that white people would not know and understand the full implications of what we were saying. But all those ships we're talking about, the stormy seas, y'all heard of, right? All of this, yes, we know stormy seas because it's stormy seas that delivered Black people to America, right? We know troubled water because we had to cross that troubled water called the Mississippi to get to freedom. Every waterway on this planet, whether an ocean, a sea, a river, a brook, knows Black flesh. Because it delivered us to some new place, right? And so we began to sing about these songs, right? God's gonna trouble the water, et cetera, et cetera. And so nature has always been a means by which African people have circumscribed our identity all around the world, right? We know water. We also know earth. We know land. We get this. We put our imprint in these places. Why? So that wherever our children might go and stand in the right place, the reverberation of the ancestors meets you there, right? I was telling my friend when we drove in this morning, I drove into Voorhees and I was like, baby, it's energy all over this campus. Somebody somewhere on this campus was teaching up a storm 100 years ago, somewhere. The energy is in the walls. It's in the very land itself. And what we have to understand in terms of fluidity is, if we can get out of this notion of thinking we need to be in a certain physical place, we do not. African people will thrive anywhere. Will thrive anywhere because we are seeds. We are seeds by design. And see, the worst thing that you can do with a seeded people is to cast them away. Because see, when you cast a seed away, all it's going to do is bloom somewhere else. That's what it's going to do. That's what seeds do, right? If you take seed and just throw it out, some of them will sprout somewhere, right? And so what we have to understand is we make home wherever it is we go. Nobody hands us a home. We create it, right? Which is why Black folks have always even dreamed of heaven as home. Right? Because we'll make that place home too. I tell my students all the time, if ain't nobody Black in heaven, you wait till we get there. Just wait till we arrive. Baby, you ain't seen it yet. Right? Because when Black folks touch anything, the identity of it shifts. If we touch a dance, white folks gonna have to let it go. It's over now. If we get in the choir, they're going to have to sit down. If you get us on the basketball court, it's done. If we get on the track, it don't make any difference. Haven't you ever noticed that? If we touch it, it's done. It's done. But the irony of that is, those same people can struggle with self-hatred. Right? But why? Because ultimately, our greatest problem, and I've struggled with this too, our greatest problem is thinking that whatever white folks have, we need the black equivalent. So as long as we're using them as our standard of measure, we always come up short, right? Folks say things like, oh, wow, Voorhees is the Harvard of the South. That's the dumbest crap I ever heard of in my life. No, Harvard is the Voorhees of the North. See, it depends on who you put at the center of your analysis, right? And it depends on who you understand to be your focal referent, right? If we can give these people back their hair, all right, all right. If we can give them back their aesthetic standard, we can look around and start seeing our own selves as beautiful, right? And start understanding how beautiful and how smart we are. And we're not smart because we passed your test. That's not why we're smart. We're not smart because we passed an SAT. That's not why we're smart. We're not smart because we did well on the GRE. That's not why we're smart. We're smart because we exist. Because see, if they had their way, we should have all been dead. This really should not, listen to me. If slavery did its work well, not only should we not be alive, we definitely shouldn't be in no college. Why are we sitting up in a college coming from the generation of people whose very aim was to kill and destroy us? Because there is something supernatural. There is something transcendent about being black that nobody can touch. Ain't nothing in the world you can do with it. Listen, you can hang black folks and then we send that spirit to the next generation. So even in death, you lose. We as black people just have to know this. You understand what I'm saying? We have to understand this. And if we understand this, and if we get this one day, and I hope that day is coming soon, if we get this one day, we'll stop begging other people's affirmation. We'll stop begging other people's validation. We'll stop using other people as our standard and our measure. We'll understand that there are all kinds of ways, all kinds of creative things we could have done years ago if we allowed ourselves to be creative instead of simply to mimic somebody else's being and somebody else's doing, right? And so what I'm ultimately saying here is fluidity is the invitation for us to be constantly creating. This is why in the black community, if a song comes out, what's today, November 3rd, 4th, what's today? 3rd. For black people, you're going to get about 60 days. And then we're going to say, oh, that's old. That's old. A hip hop song is not going to live no 2 years. Because what we say, next. Why? Because that's brilliance calling for brilliance. Next. Take it up higher. Come on. Give me something else. Ah, that's good. Oh, wow, that was hot. Good. Next. Right? Because fluidity is always saying there's something greater. There's something greater. Give me the greater thing. And we don't ever get to grade test. And that's the beauty of what it means to be black. The beauty of what it means to be black is that it is ever operative, meaning it's always moving. It's always shifting. There's always a new dance. There's always a new dance. There's always a new way of doing it because we're saying there is another level of brilliance. Show me. Show me. Don't just do, You can't sing to me now the way Patti LaBelle did 40 years ago and think we're supposed to fall out. No, she already did it. That's not gonna work. Not for black people. Not for black people. Right? All of y'all heard, lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. You already heard it. We love the song, but you can't sing it to me like that. That's not gonna work. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. A little better. That still ain't it. I don't hear no runs, I don't hear no trips. See, for black people, you've got to always be titillating the aesthetic possibility. Right? That's who we are. That's the magic of what it means to be black. Right? You can even wear the same outfit for black people, but you got to wear it a new way. You gotta change the shoes, the belt. And for black people, you got to wear it right. Somebody understand what I'm saying to you? You know, for black people, you can have on a very, very, very plain dress, sisters. But if you can walk, and when black people say walk, we don't just mean move. Right? Black people mean move in rhythm and in time. And if you can move in rhythm and time, black people say, okay. And what does that mean? What does that mean? We're snapping, and most of us don't even know, we're actually snapping as a counter rhythm to your rhythm that you created in that movement. Because rhythm is what we do. That's how we, if there's a black choir singing, we need you to sing, rock, and clap. Okay. If you can't do that, you usher. Come out. And that's our fluidity, right? That's our fluidity. All I'm trying to show you is that we do it everywhere. Most times we don't even think about it. That's the genius of blackness. We don't even think about it. It's just how it's like the difference between dressing and stuffing. If you're black, you know. Huh? You know. If you got a white friend, which is wonderful, it's no problem. You got a white friend, you don't let them bring the dressing to Thanksgiving. Y'all bring the Coke. Y'all bring the drink. Don't bring the greens. But why not? Why not? Because there's a standard of specialty. There's a measure of excellence that black people presume. And we're very peculiar, right, about how it's going to be met. It's got to be done a certain kind of way. All I'm really trying to show you is that's the tradition of black excellence. That's how we move. Steph Curry on the basketball court. Steph Curry is doing a particular kind of magical thing. LeBron, they're doing a particular kind of magic. There's a way we do it. There's a way we do it, and there's style in it. And without that style, you don't have the African. Let me stop. Go ahead. Yes.
See, that's why we can't get them started, right? But no, I do, as time permits, at least take a question or two from our students.
30-ish? Okay, yes, ma'am.
Do we have a question?
There's several questions.
Yeah, several questions. Okay. Young lady right here with your hand up. And then I get to
Hello, my name is Kendra,
Hi,
and I have a question for you. At what point, as a black male with no assistance from your father, did you discover excellence?
My great-grandmother reared me. My great-grandmother was born in the 1890s. And my great-grandmother, she had been a reader, right? My great-grandmother, her eyesight went bad in her mid-80s or so. And she would have me read to her because I like to read. I was probably 6 or 7 when I first started. She would say, "Child, come here and read me this here," right? Often it was the Bible, right? But sometimes it's other texts. And as her eyesight waned, she would close her eyes. She said, "This rocking chair, I can see it, right?" She would rock in this rocking chair, right, as I'm reading to her, right? And so I got 6, 8, 9, got a little older, whatever. And she, you all are young, but there used to be a thing called Reader's Digest. My grandmother got Reader's Digest. There were stories in Reader's Digest, and she would have me read these stories to her, right? So I'm 9 or 10 by this point, right? I'm reading these stories. And there are times when, she's closed her eyes. There are times when her eyes would pop open and she'd say, "That ain't how they said it." And I was like, "Ma'am, I'm just reading." She said, say it the way the people ought to sound. Right? I'm 9 years old, rural Arkansas. So I started kind of acting out these roles and these characters, right? Because my grandmother, what she was really trying to do was to get me to transfer an image to her head, right? So I started reading, and I would raise my voice if a woman was talking, right? I'd lower it if it was an older man, right? If there's an exclamation point, I'd shout it, right? This kind of thing, right? I did not know she was teaching me excellence, right? I did not understand that then. I understand it now. But by the time I got 11, 12 or so, I was good at dramatic. Right? I was good at dramatic. But But the way it transferred to school was when it came time for me to write essays, right? I could scratch them out, okay? But it's because I had been practicing with my grandmother orally, right, all these years, right? My grandmother died before I graduated from high school, but by that point, I was on the trajectory, right? I started writing my own, after maybe 14 or so. My grandmother would say, listen, I don't want you to read nothing today, make it up. I was like, what? She said, you done read enough stories, make one up. So I started pacing a little bit in her little living room, right? There was a little boy. She said, how old was he? Like, hell, I don't know. So I got to sign him an age, right? She was teaching me how to do character development, but she didn't know these words. You see what I'm saying? Right. But by the time I finished doing this, right, I was a writer and didn't even know. Right? And so what I'm really saying to you, sister, is in probably 90% of all of our cases, God sends you the person who will set up your destiny. If we'll stop begging for the person we think we wanted. Oh my God, my daddy here. Daddy wasn't supposed to do it. That's the promise of the universe. The promise of the universe is that whoever you need for your destiny, you will meet.
Hello, my name is Joshua Duncan.
Hey, bro.
I'm a member of the Honors College.
Yeah.
I'm a theology major, and I wanted to know, when writing Don't Cry For Me, what is the spiritual and cultural awareness that you want the Black family to, I guess, like, be aware of, as we see like the Black family on a decline now, and that's like the structure for African Americans. So what is the awareness that you want African Americans in the family to see when reading Don't Cry For Me?
Yes, sir. One, that ancestors are a part of the living family, right? That's extremely important. That our grandparents who have passed on into eternity are still part of the family. Not that they were once part of the family. They are currently part of the family, which means you got to talk to them the same way I'm talking to you right now, right? That's what, because it connects you across time, right? And it keeps you from being limited to just the historical now, right? When you're getting ready to take an exam, you walk in there, what's your grandfather's name? Tell me. You walk in there and say, all right, granddaddy, here we go. Granddaddy, the same way you picked that cotton, bring the memory of these facts back to me. Then you'll understand, right, that you're part of a lineage, and you're successful not in spite of him, you're successful because of him. Right? You don't need degrees in your lineage to get a degree. Right? You need work ethic in the lineage to get a degree. Right? And what you want character more than you want degrees. Right? Because whoever has character, people are going to open the doors for that person. Right? Richard Douglas didn't have no degree. Harry Tubman didn't have no degree. Nat Turner didn't have no degree. And we're speaking of all their names. But you do, or you're about to, right? And when you get it, and you need it, let me be clear, and you need it. But once you get it, what you have to understand is, hey, Grandpa, this yours too. Right? They were handed to you. Your job is to deliver it to your people.
Hello, my name is Vicky McKenzie. And Don't Cry For Me, did we ever have the son's perspective?
Oh,
And does the son?
I knew somebody was going to ask. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, I've already written it, right? I've already written it. The son's perspective is going to come out. It's probably going to take another little minute, but it is done. In fact, the son does what the father does. After the son buries his father, he comes home and he finds the letters. Right. After he reads all of them, he gets out a legal pad and writes his father, who is now ancestral. Right? And he's writing to him as an ancestor. It's going to kill you what this son says. And the way he sees his father more clearly now, the way he understands his daddy. But it's just I have to tell you, it killed me. I mean, I know I wrote it, right? But it really, 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 really killed me. Because the way the son got respected from hearing his father's story, right? It's really a healing moment, right? So it's coming soon. I'll take her. Can we take her? I'll take both of them.
The man has spoken.
Thank you for coming.
Yes,
My
ma'am.
question is, being that you know how they try to belittle this generation, what are some short-term goals now that we can accomplish, current and for the next generation?
Okay, I'm gonna answer it in two ways. One, I was telling my class the other day that one of the things that I wish and I'm hoping that this current generation does is become communally committed. What I mean, like when I look at you, I'm sure you're really fantastic, amazing young lady. And what I want this generation to do is start grabbing other ones and saying, I'm going to the library, you coming too. Come on here. Come on here. Because me achieving alone is going to leave me by myself on the Supreme Court. We need 2 and 3. You see what I'm saying? So one person achieving, right, is not the greatest goal. The greatest goal is if we get groups of us in places, right? See, it's hard to push over a group of people, but I can push over one person easily, right? So we need bands of folks to band together. Part of the problem is that my generation, directly or indirectly, taught your generation to be an individual. That's really not the smartest thing, right? An individual tree is never a forest, not by itself. And it takes a forest to get an ecosystem. See what I'm saying, right? The second thing that I would urge us to do is I would urge us to become adamant readers, right? Because there are simply things that people are using against us. There are ways that people are tricking a current generation, and it's just because our knowledge level is too low. It's just too low about many, many things. Now, if I mention Mary J. Blige, no problem. No problem. If I say Lil Wayne, no problem. Right? No problem. But here's the problem. How do those people, the Lil Waynes and the Ray, how do those people get tricked into demeaning themselves for cash? See, that's a trick. The notion that you're going to pay me $1 million, right, or $10 million, right, for this hip hop contract. But on this track, right, I'm actually demeaning Black women, which means I have absolutely insulted the mother of my children, right? But in a minute, I'm going to have children, and I want those children to honor us. See, it doesn't line up. It's not spiritually aligned, right? But the trick was money. But here's the answer. We came here because somebody paid for us. So it's the same trick all over again. See, people paid for the body at first, now they're paying for the voice.
Okay, I know I said the last was the.
There was one more, I
last
promise.
was- Okay, I promise this one is the last.
Thank y'all so much.
But,
It's good.
yes.
Hello.
Hello, my sister.
My question for your book is, how has your book shaped you and your character now?
This book has made me revisit Black men before the 1970s. It's made me reconsider those old Black men. You know, you see them in pictures who are in these overalls and this kind of right. It's made me revisit and understand that they paid a price for Black families and for Black life that really none of us have acknowledged. Right? If you go to a railroad and you work on the railroad for 50 years and you sent money home, follow me. If we're not careful, we're blaming Daddy for his absence. But the money he sent home is the reason I'm in college able to blame him. You see what I'm saying? So it made me reconsider, right, the places, right, where salvation came to me, right? But it didn't come to me the way I wanted it. And so I missed it. I missed it. Right? And it made me understand that some people saved me who I thought I didn't even like. It's like a hell of a teacher who holds you to a standard, who doesn't take late papers. It's the teacher who says no makeup exams whatsoever, right? But then, and I'm cussing this teacher out because they won't take it right. The truth of the matter is that's the one. That's the teacher right there who I'll be telling my children about. You never remember the easy teachers. It's only the teachers who ride you whose names get imprinted in the psyche.
I so hate that this has to come, all good things though. As you said, that is the flow, that is the fluidity of where we are. All good things must come to an end, but that's just for now. So even in this space, this place, this time, I would like to say thank you, thank you, thank you. In the absence, of course, of our 10th president, Dr. Ronnie Hopkins, we like to call him our dime president. That is who he is to us. And then, of course, his esteemed cabinet, our faculty, our staff, our students, all who love and serve this wonderful institution that Elizabeth Evelyn Wright has, what she does, what she did.
That's right.
Our provost is going to come, the dynamic Dr. Demara Hightower Mitchell. Say that to let my boss. To give us some closing remarks. Dr. Mitchell?
Thank you so much. So I certainly will not belabor the hour. Can I tell you what an amazing gift you are to us and our people today? I am overcome with emotion. There's so many beautiful nuggets that you shared today, but there's one thing, you used the word transform. I think Dr. Shimon, you began with that. And then you said a couple of things even about your father. So you all, this is what I really took from this. One, I had an opportunity to hear you speak, and you mentioned that when we were enslaved, that really we were being sent to transform humanity.
That's right. That's right.
And so your very presence here today was about helping us remember who we are on this campus and what we're here to do. And so every student here, no matter what you've gone through, whatever that experience was to transform you. And you are here not only to transform yourselves and your lives, but to later go out and do that into the world. And so thank you for helping us remind. So we've had a Sankofa moment, helping us remember who we are. So you all, please join me again in giving him a round of applause. Such an amazing Dr. Brown. And while we're doing so, please thank Dr. Schnauber for doing such a great job with moderation. Beautifully done. Excellent. So at this time, we're going to ask Dr. Vinnie James to bring the benediction so that we can depart. There is one announcement I'll share, and that is that we are continuing constantly trying to make sure that we provide opportunities for you. There is a presentation about drones today at 3 o'clock. There are scholarships available, you all. You have no idea the amount of money you can make even as a side hustle with that certification. And we're going to make sure that there are about 20 students who get that. Is it 1 p.m.? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for reminding me. Please.
Well, everyone say. May the Lord go with you. May He look upon you and guide you. May you leave this place being transformed by the power of Almighty God. So go in peace. Serve the Lord with gladness.
Amen. Amen. Oh, my Lord. Oh, yes, ma'am. I did.